Hey guys, so here is that histology video that I told you I would do where I basically just walk you through some cells and some slides and I talk about how I recognize things. So these first three PowerPoint slides are all the same thing. They're all part of the trachea, but there's different parts of the trachea that, like I could put a trachea slide on a practical and you just point to one thing or another. So I'm going to start with this right here. This is hyaline cartilage. And the way that I know that, the first thing I see are all of these lacunae. So you've got basically these big spaces with a cell inside. Those are chondrocytes in there, those cells. But these lacunae like this, if I see an open space like this with a cell inside, that is like an instantaneous for me, okay, this is either cartilage or bone. And because those are the types of connective tissue that have lacunae. So I can automatically rule out bone because I don't see anything that looks like an osteon in here. And since we're doing bones in class this week, you've seen the osteons, you've had some extra experience with those. I don't see anything that looks like circular rings that would be an osteon. So I know this has got to be cartilage. Now to determine which kind of cartilage it is, I got to think a little bit harder. So I've got all my lacunae. Well, I look at this matrix between. And in this matrix between, it looks pretty smooth. I mean, even though there's a lot of lacunae in here and stuff, I don't see a lot of fibers because to me, the elastic cartilage and the hyaline cartilage are the two hardest to tell apart. And without those elastic fibers, I can feel like 98% confident that this is hyaline cartilage because I don't see fibers. I see a smooth matrix between the lacunae. And then what gives me that extra 2% is because when I look at all of this and I see this epithelium up here, I go, oh, this is in the respiratory tract because this kind of epithelium, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, really happens in the respiratory tract. And I know there's hyaline cartilage in the trachea working its way through parts of the respiratory tract. So for me, I look at the whole thing. If I'm just trying to figure out this, I first figure out I've got it down to cartilage. I feel really confident it's hyaline, and then I can recognize it's in the respiratory tract. I know y'all are not going to be asked to do that, but little things like that can sometimes help. All right, next slide. So this is basically that same thing, just from a little bit further away. The hyaline cartilage you can see in this one, it's a slightly different picture, but you can see there's like that smooth matrix. This is actually a terrible picture. We're skipping it. Okay, here is just, it's this part. So just this edge part and this little bit of this. All right, so if I'm asked to identify this tissue right here, the first thing I do, it's an edge. It's an epithelium. I can throw out nervous tissue. I can throw out muscle tissue. I can throw out all the connective tissues and just focus on epithelium because I have an edge right here. So I know this is epithelium. All right, what else do I know? Well, this looks like a nucleus. So if this is a nucleus, this whole thing is a cell. And that looks really tall and thin to me. So it's probably columnar. Let's look at the other cells around it and see if they are the same way. Well, here's another nucleus and oh, I can kind of make out a cell right here. And there's another cell right here. Well, these are all long and thin. So I have just discovered this is epithelium because there's a space, and it's columnar because of the shape of these cells. Now, when I get to columnar epithelium, I know there is simple columnar, there's stratified columnar, and there is pseudostratified. Well, what do I know about pseudostratified? I know I would look at all of these nuclei and go, okay, I don't think this is simple because I've got nuclei all over the place. So this is either stratified or pseudostratified. Now, how do I tell which one it is? So the pseudostratified, can I see where all of the cells reach the basal surface? Maybe, maybe not. This one looks like it's squeezing in right here. This is not the most awesome picture ever, but I can see that some of them are. But my other key is all of these little cilia. I don't recall anything about stratified, just plain stratified columnar epithelium being ciliated, but I do recall pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. And so that helps me know it's the pseudostratified. I can see cells that reach, you know, all the way to the base. Most of these cells look like they're reaching all the way to the base. And so, but the nuclei are all at different levels, so that gives me the pseudostratified. All right, this tissue underneath. And like I said, this is not a very good picture, but I kind of did that on purpose because you could get all kinds of slides, some that are perfect and really good and some that are a little torn up. Well, I know if I'm looking, I can kind of see this line right here. So this is one type of tissue, and then this is a different type of tissue. So if my pointer's up here, then I've already gone through how I identified this as pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. Down here, it can't be epithelium because I don't see an edge. So I don't think it's muscle because I don't see anything that looks like straight, like the muscular tissue. If it was skeletal or cardiac, it would be striated, and the smooth muscle just doesn't look like this mess. So I look at it and I see this mess and I see, oh, there's a cell right here and there's a cell right here and there's some wavy stuff. Those wavy things to me look like collagen fibers. And I know we didn't require y'all to learn what collagen fibers are, but they're a pretty important part of connective tissue. So if you can identify different types of fibers, like the collagen always looks kind of wavy to me, and it's a little bit longer and thicker. It almost looks like ribbons. So if I see that, I'm okay, it's connective tissue. I know I'm in connective tissue. Now, what kind is it? Well, I don't see the elastic fibers like this, the ones that just look like thin, dark lines. I don't see that. I don't see this being in like a complete form. It looks pretty dense, like it's not all spread out. So now I'm down to dense tissue. I've got it down to dense connective tissue, but there's regular and there's irregular. Well, it kind of looks like a mess. Dense regular tissue is more ordered, and you can almost identify specific lines of the collagen and the fibers. So this is dense irregular connective tissue. Okay, so some of this is recognizing things and some of it is narrowing down and like knowing it's not this and it's not that. All right, next slides. Okay, these are the same thing, but I put them both on here because I think that even though to me they don't really look that much alike as far as just like the stains are different, kind of this background area is different, but look at these cells. This one over here in the purple and this one over here in the pink. These are neurons. And the way that I can always tell a neuron is because a neuron looks like a big kind of irregular shaped cell. I'm not necessarily going to, this one's kind of more rounded. This one's got like a little stem thing. This one has all kinds of little arms and legs. So they're all neurons, but the big way that I tell is the nucleus inside a neuron looks like a giant eye. This looks like an eyeball to me. This looks like an eyeball to me. This looks like an eyeball. So regardless of what the background and the matrix and everything, all the other things in there are doing, if I can find a big cell like this that looks like it has an eyeball right in the middle, it's a neuron. This is a neuron, so this is neural tissue, nervous tissue. Some of these other littler cells around it are some of those glial cells, the neuroglial cells that support the neurons, but these big ones with the eyeball in the middle, that's a neuron. So that is how I always tell when I'm looking at nervous tissue, because it's got those big neurons with the big eyeballs right in the middle. They look kind of like little aliens, you know, maybe it's a little Mike Wazowski, I don't know, whatever helps you. All right, this one tripped up a lot of people on the practical one. So I look like I've got some layers going on here. So let me see if I can figure out what's going on. If I have an arrow pointing to this area right here, well, first thing I see, there is an edge. This is an epithelial tissue. So if I'm looking at epithelium, I can just mentally throw out muscle, nerves, all the connective tissues, they're gone. None of those are possibilities. So for epithelial tissue, what kind of cell types are there? There's cuboidal, there's squamous, and there's columnar. What am I looking at here? I don't think I see anything that looks like a column. So I'm going to just toss out columnar. All the varieties of columnar tissue, gone. If I look down here, maybe that's a little cube, maybe that's a little cube, but if I look at the whole thing, oh look, there's like a flattened looking cell, kind of fried eggy, and here's another one, and over here there's one, and there's another one, and there's one. So I'm looking at all these cells, and even though some of them might, especially down in here towards the basal layer, might look a little cuboidal, for the most part, they're fried egg looking. They're squamous. So I'm at squamous. So I've got squamous cells here. Now, do I have one layer of squamous cells or do I have multiple layers of squamous cells? Well, that should be pretty obvious. All of these. It's even if I can't distinguish specific lines going through, this is multiple rows and groups and layers of squamous cells. All right, so I'm down to its epithelium, it's squamous, and it's stratified because I've got all these layers of it. Now, when I get to that point, stratified squamous epithelium, I can go with keratinized or non-keratinized. How am I going to tell? The way I tell is I see all the nuclei really clearly down here towards the basal layer. And as I work my way up, oh, still nuclei, there's still nuclei. Oh, that's nuclei too. Those are nuclei, those are nuclei, those are nuclei. So if I've got nuclei going all the way to my apical surface, then I know that this is non-keratinized, because if it were keratinized, I wouldn't see these nuclei. Now, another one that this got confused with was transitional. Transitional looks more bubbly, and I actually have a picture of that too. So I know I'm at epithelium, I know there's squamous cells, I know it's stratified, and if I've got nuclei going all the way up, I'm going to go with squamous or stratified squamous epithelium, non-keratinized with this one. That's how I got to this point. So I started looking at cell shape. I started looking at how many numbers, how many layers there are. And then I looked for nuclei going all the way up once I figured out that I was at stratified squamous. So there you go. And the epithelium part was easy because look, it's a big edge. All right, next. All right, these two are also the same thing. So this is connective tissue down here. But I want to know this stuff here and this stuff here. And look, I can see an edge and I can see an edge. So I'm talking about the epithelium. You can ignore these letters on here. I just copied and pasted this off of a website. So if I'm starting to look at this, what do I see first? Well, I can start looking at the shapes of cells and I can look on this one, or I can look over here. Even though this is a little bit blurry, it still looks like those squamous cells to me. They don't look particularly cubed, and they are definitely not columnar. They some of them are a little bit oblong, some of them are a little more squarish, some of them are a little more round, but they're all kind of that flattened cell. And over here, even though it's blurry, all of these darker blobs, those are nuclei. And you can see, like, this is a cell outline right here that you can see. And here's another cell outline. So I'm at epithelium, so it's got to be squamous, cuboidal, or columnar. Can't be columnar because I don't see anything that's like tall and thin. And it's not cuboidal because I don't see anything that looks like a cube. These all just look kind of flattened. So these are squamous cells. All right, so I'm down to my cell type. I'm at epithelium, squamous epithelium. Is it stratified or simple? How many layers do I have? Well, I see a whole bunch piled up here. I see a bunch piled up here. I see these layers. I'm not totally sure at this point what this is or what these little bits are, but I see layers. So I'm going to go with stratified squamous epithelium. So now I just need to decide if it's keratinized or non-keratinized. Well, the closer I get to the edge over here, this one, I can see nuclei all the way to here, but then I have this weird stuff hanging off, and I'm not maybe totally sure about that. So if I think about it and I remember, oh, Stratified squamous keratinized, those cells are dead. They don't have nuclei. And I remember Miss Nicholas saying that sometimes in thinner skin, like this one is, those keratinized cells, while the slides are being made, kind of get ripped off a little bit. So I wonder if this is keratinized cells. And yes, you would be correct. So even though you see these nuclei going all the way up to here, you can't discount this stuff. This is thin skin, like what you would find on your face. And so there's not quite as thick of a layer of that keratinized tissue as there is on thick skin. But when you see this stuff hanging off the edge like this, and it's still following along, even with gaps and stuff, you have to remember things get a little bit torn when the slides are made, when you're cutting these tissue and then you're putting it on a slide and you're staining it and all of that. Sometimes the tissue gets a little torn, and that's all that's happening here. This should all be attached, but it has come off because it's been keratinized, it doesn't hold on as well. Over here, this is thick skin. This is like the palms of your hands and the soles of your feet. And you can see even it's being like torn off. It's just a thicker layer of it. So even though I see these cells, these nuclei and these cells going all the way to here, I've still got this whole extra layer of what I think are cells. I can't be 100% sure because I don't see nuclei, but I see that edge. And so I do know that in an epithelium where something looks like this, it's probably keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium keratinized. So that's how I get to it on these. All right, next one. Okay, so this one, I start out and I look at it, and to be really honest, on this particular one on the left, this cell right here tells me exactly what this tissue is. This is the only cell I even have to look at, but I'm gonna walk you through everything so that you're there. Oh, look, there's a similar cell right here. All right, first thing, what's my major tissue type? Well, I have an edge, so it's epithelium. Look, both of them have edges. Yay, epithelium. Easy to figure out the major tissue type on these. There's an edge, it's epithelium. And then what am I looking at? Well, these cells look kind of columnar, but this one just looks like it's kind of sitting on top. This one, I'm not sure. I am just not sure what's going on with this. So let me think. If I can't really figure out the cell type, it could be one of those special epitheliums. And this one is. This is transitional epithelium. And the reason this cell gives it all away for me is because transitional epithelium has weird cells with 2 nuclei in them. Here's another one right here. There are 2 nuclei in this cell. Over here, working my way around, some of these maybe, but oh look, right here, there's 2 nuclei. Now I can't always see 2 nuclei, but if I can see this where it looks like there's all kinds of layers going on and the cells just are not, they don't really seem to fit. I almost want to call them columnar, but then I get all this rounded stuff, and there's like a flattened one. If you look at this image over here on the right, there's like a flattened one here. So I can't go columnar and stratified. And this one just looks a little like, I don't know, like some sort of monster peeking, or a jellyfish maybe. Like these don't look like stratified or like the squamous, the cuboidal, or the columnar cells. So that is actually a clue on this one. When you've got cells like this that you're just not sure what the shape is, then I start looking for these double nucleated, binucleated is the proper term for it. I start looking for these binucleated cells. And if I can find one of those, then I can feel pretty confident that this is transitional tissue. This one got confused a lot on the practical with the stratified squamous non-keratinized, but if you notice, these are not squamous cells. These just look much too tall and columnar. And like I said, I want to call it columnar, but then that doesn't account for these other cells that are kind of ovally shaped or bulbous. This one's a little bit flatter. So when I see something like this where it looks like columnar and it looks like the squamous cells, I start to go, okay, I think this is one of those that's just kind of special, and transitional tissue is just kind of special. You only find it in the urinary tract, in the urethra, in the urinary bladder, And these cells have this shape so that they can expand and contract depending on whether your bladder is full or empty, or whether the urethra has the urine going through it, or if it's empty. So that's transitional. That's how I figure it out. All right, this one, I just look at this and I go, what the heck? Is this some sort of like Jackson Pollock painting or some sort of like weird art? Let's see if I can figure it out. I don't see an edge anywhere. I see a whole bunch of holes. But you know what? I see these long ribbon-like threads. Those are collagen. Like I said, you don't have to know that's collagen, but to me it helps to see this ribbon-like thread, and I start to see collagen, and I see these darker lines that look like somebody just took a marker and just started drawing on them. Those are also going to be fibers. So I've got these thicker ribbon-like fibers, and I've got these thinner fibers. This is loose connective tissue. It's areolar. You can call it loose or you can call it areolar. I think it's areolar in your lab manual, so we'll go with areolar. And I can tell because I've got a cell over here and a cell over here and cells over here, and I can see these fibers, some that are thicker and ribbon-like, which is the collagen, and some that are the thinner, which is like the elastic and the reticular fibers. This is actually more elastic fibers, but occasionally some of these may be reticular, but don't confuse that with reticular fiber because you've got all this collagen. And so, and it's just kind of, it doesn't look very cohesive. Dense irregular and dense regular, they're like, you don't see this many holes in it. I see all the holes, and that's what tells me it's loose or areolar. So there's that one. All right, this one, I actually have two different things on the same slide, but they are the same major tissue type. And the reason I know what their major tissue type is all these little stripies on both of them are called striations. And these striations tell me that it's muscle. These striations are what expand and relax. They expand and contract, you know, to make your muscles work. So immediately these striations tell me I've got muscle tissue here. So striations equal muscle tissue. Now, how do I tell what kind of muscle tissue I'm looking at? I'm going to look at this one on the right first. All right, I'm looking at it. I don't really see, like I see these long kind of striated fibers, and look, there's a nucleus, 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 nucleus. I don't really see cell divisions in here. So this tells me, okay, it looks like there's more than one nucleus in a cell. What kind of muscle has that? Oh, that's skeletal muscle. That's my voluntary muscle that I am in my arms and my legs that I can control. Because I don't see any specific cell divisions, you know, it just looks like really long fibers, lots of nuclei in it. So I'm going to go with skeletal muscle on this one. Over here, I can see the striations and it looks like long fibers, but what are these dark lines? These dark lines are the key to this type of tissue. This is cardiac tissue, and you have to think, if you remember how hard your heart works, especially if you're like doing something athletic or working hard and your heart starts really beating and pumping, you know, you're running a mile and it's just going, it's got to be super strong, and its connections have to stay together so it doesn't just fall apart while you're out there working and running and whatever it is you're doing. So these are those intercalated discs that hold the cells together. Now, I might be tempted to be a little confused by this and want to call this skeletal because it looks like I have a nucleus here and it looks like I have a nucleus here. Same thing, one here, one here. But if I look really closely, I have an intercalated disc here and I have one back, oh, sorry. And I have one back here, and I can look at this and go, I'm pretty sure this is just two cells stacked on each other, and somehow in the process of getting them on this slide to be put under the microscope, it maybe got a little bit, they got a little bit torn or something. So if I see these intercalated discs, I can just know, I see the striations and I see the intercalated discs. This is cardiac. One other thing is cardiac cells branch. And if I look at this cell right here, it's got a branch. It goes off this way and it goes off this way. So this intercalated disc and this intercalated disc are both attached to this cell. It's just branched. So if I don't see the branching though, that's okay, because I'm seeing these intercalated discs. I don't see that over here. I see striation. I know it's muscle. I see striation and I know it's either cardiac muscle or skeletal muscle. I look for these intercalated discs. I don't see them over here at all. So it's skeletal. I see them over here. It's cardiac. Okay, these are actually the same thing. And I put this picture on the left because I think it's evil. But I wanted you to see the evil as well as the not so evil. So I might look at this over here and I might be tempted to call this like reticular tissue or something. Okay, first off, I don't see an edge. So I know I'm not in epithelium. I don't see any kind of like striations or anything that looks like muscle tissue in this section or over here. So I can throw out muscle. Neurons. Well, I do feel like this kind of looks like it has an eye and this kind of looks like it has an eye. However, that doesn't really look like neurons to me. Instead of neurons, these look like lacunae with cells inside. And maybe instead of that being the nucleus of the eye, maybe that's the cell inside a lacuna. So this doesn't really look like all of these. I mean, if this was neural tissue, I wouldn't see this many cells, this many neurons this close together. They're a little bit bigger, they're a little bit spread out, and they're definitely not circular shaped. I might have one or two, but I'm not seeing those shapes that look like they have arms and legs or little stems coming off. So I got to throw out the neurons too. So I'm down to connective tissue. So when I look at this one, it might be tempting to call it reticular or maybe even call it elastic because I see all these really dark lines. But these big circular openings, those are the lacunae. That tells me this is either bones or cartilage. And since I don't see the osteons of bones, I'm to cartilage. So now how do I tell what it is? Well, if I look in the matrix, if I look between the lacunae, I have all these dark fibers. Over here, it's a little bit messier, but those are dark fibers that you can see in that matrix. So dark fibers, elastic fibers are really dark, and so are reticular, but I don't have anything called reticular cartilage, but I do have something called elastic cartilage. So this is elastic cartilage because I have the lacunae with the chondrocytes in the middle, and I have all of these strands. And in this one, it's even a little bit harder to see the elastic, but if you recall the hyaline cartilage, this matrix was smooth. This does not look smooth. It does look like somebody scribbled a little bit in here. Those are those elastic fibers that make this the elastic cartilage that you find like in your outer ear. So that's how I identify these. I gave you one that just looks painful, and I gave you one that's a little more obviously cartilage. But those are the things I look for. I look for those lacunae. Well, I look for the edge first, and if there's no edge, then it's not epithelium, and I can just start narrowing down. No striations, it's not muscle. Cartilage, because I've got these big lacunae. And then what type of cartilage? Elastic, because look at all these strings of elastic. There you go. Elastic cartilage, diagnosed just for you. All right, this one, this is, I look at this and it looks like big, like balloons or bubbles. And if I look, I can see little bits here, or, oh, look, that looks like it might be a nucleus of something. This looks like maybe a nucleus, a little bit of nuclei. This looks like it's about 4, but I'm not really sure. I'm remembering, though, that these tissues are never just a single layer of cells. You may have like 5 or 10 layers all bunched on this cell. So even though it looks 2D, I'm remembering it's bigger. So I could have all these balloon-like cells, you know, meeting. Just like if you take a bunch of balloons and hold them, you know, right by the openings that have been tied off, you can see those openings. On this, that could be what this is here, where I have all these balloons with like their little openings, or maybe it's a whole bunch of diamond rings coming in from one way. And this is really thin. This is a really thin cellular membrane. So this is adipose tissue. This is, you get these big ring or like bubble looking things, and then the nuclei get kind of pushed off to the side because these cells can get huge. Liposuction doesn't work because if any adipose cells are left, a single adipose cell will just fill all the space that it has to fill. If it's got fat, if it's got adipose to put in it, the fat to put in it, it will just keep filling and filling and filling. And so even if you get liposuction and you remove some of these cells, the ones that are left can just keep growing. So it looks kind of balloon-like, and that adipose inside the cells pushes the nuclei off to the side. So this is like where you've got 4 or 5 adipose cells all kind of bunched in together, and all of their nuclei just happen to be right next to each other. But these big rings and bubbles, it's adipose tissue, which is a connective type of tissue. This one, so I might be tempted to say it's an epithelium because I see this edge right here. But if I look really closely, I want to know this stuff in here with all the black lines. If I look really closely, it looks like I have a layer here and a layer here. So this is either going to be like keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium keratinized, or this is the epithelium and this is the connective tissue below it. So I got to figure out what's what. Well, if I look and see these dark shadows, then I'm pretty sure that those are nuclei. And so I don't think that this is going to be, I don't think this is skin. I don't think it's keratinized. So maybe this is one layer and this is one layer. Well, if I look at all of these dark lines that are all lined up in a row, this is elastic fibers. They get that really dark and they look kind of wavy. I mean, it really looks like a little kid was drawing the ocean and just drew a whole bunch of waves across over and over and over again. That's elastic tissue. Those are elastic fibers. So this is elastic tissue. And that's how I tell. And I'm cautious because over here, I mean, I double check it because I think, oh, maybe it's an epithelium. But when I see this whole layer and then this looks so completely different, and it's got all of these fibers in it that are like wavy, then I can go, okay, this is elastic tissue. All right, so that is just some of the cells. I obviously didn't do all the types of tissue, but if that helps you kind of be able to diagnose things and look at things, and you can look at a thing here and a thing here on a cell, and when you put it all together, that's how you determine what it is. So you guys watch this, let me know if it's helpful, let me know if it's not helpful, or if you want more explanation, or if there's a specific type of tissue you need help with. You are always welcome to email me, come to my office hours, either on Zoom, or you can come to my actual office. We can even go down to the lab and pull out a microscope and pull out the slides if you ever need that. Just ask. Have a good day, guys.